Some early concerns about sports gambling here in Rhode Island.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
You know, other than in Vegas, the data is not very available, never mind clear, about what sports gambling is going to mean for our state and all the states that are rushing to incorporating that business and adding it to their tax base. But Dr. Patrick Kelly from the School of Business at Providence College, who does a lot of research on the gaming issue and you know, how we nurse those challenges of problem gambling in society and all that, is here to talk about some of the trends and some of the prognostications, because right now that's about all it is. So we'll get to that this evening. Nice to have you. Thanks very much for tuning in on Wednesday evening. Let's go to the headlines nationally and all the conversation that is going on around President Trump and Paul Manafort at this point. Something weird is going on here. I mean, it's like a House of Cards episode, and we're only getting like the back end, the reported end. Here's the latest from the network.
The president was involved in no wrongdoing, was not part of any collusion.
The White House appeared to distance itself from new developments in Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into Russian collusion.
We're ready for this to wrap up.
The president's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, pled guilty in September to criminal conspiracy charges in exchange for his cooperation with the investigation. Yesterday, Mueller filed documents with a D.C. federal court saying Manafort committed federal crimes by lying to the FBI and the special counsel's office on a variety of subject matters which constitute breaches of agreement. Manafort's lawyers told the court he believes he provided truthful information. The president unleashed several tweets accusing special counsel Mueller of damaging the justice system, yet some lawmakers are worried a presidential pardon could do more damage.
I think a pardon would provoke a firestorm here. It would be solid evidence of obstruction of justice.
Defenders of the president say they think it's unlikely.
Don't see Mr. Manafort getting a pardon.
The White House also tamped down on talks of a pardon.
I'm not aware of any conversations for anyone's pardon.
The special counsel has also requested a judge no longer delay sentencing Manafort, who could spend the rest of his life in prison.
Yeah, what's weird about this is the president and Rudy Giuliani are probably on their own, and maybe a couple other lawyers here, right, are on their own wavelength when it comes to the potential for a pardon. So it doesn't matter what Sarah says, and it doesn't matter what the senator says, even though the senator, I think, is suggesting that it better not come their way. Crazy stuff, but the tweeting and the public conversation is incredible. Rudy Giuliani is so aggressive again, and the president is so aggressive again, which tells me to remind ourselves that this, at the end of the day, is going to be the court of public opinion, because no matter what, there likely is not going to be a criminal indictment of the president. There might very well be an impeachment in a Democratic-controlled House and resistance to that for sure in the Senate. Pardons could upset that process. So it's really it's kind of like a political mystery at this point. And if you like that kind of stuff, you're enjoying this. If you're thinking about what's best for America, well, maybe not so much. Speaking of the tweeting, here's a series of tweets from the president this morning regarding General Motors, which were different than yesterday's tweets. Now he's talking about the tariffs, and now he's thinking about whacking the industry with tariffs such that it forces places like GM not to close plants in Ohio, Maryland, and Michigan, perhaps in Mexico and in China, right? So you can read these tweets, and it's really kind of a veiled threat, kind of like the threat from yesterday where the president was talking about removing subsidies from GM. And all day yesterday, I spent researching, trying to find out what the subsidies were. I even asked our own U.S. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse if he knew.
Republicans pushed the tax bill through on the grounds that this was going to make investment more appealing for big government manufacturers. And the president walked around through some of these areas where these plants are, saying, don't sell your house, we're going to save this plant, this is all going to be made to work. So I think he's embarrassed as hell that all this is blown up in his face, and it certainly disproves the merit of the tax bill as far as protecting these manufacturing plants. So I think he's got kind of no place left to go, and is just trying to find some way to criticize the auto industry. But I can't think of any subsidies that come to mind that he would be talking about. You know, trying to chase him down some of these rat holes is not a successful proposition. You keep chasing, and there's nothing there at the end of the day.
The senator, fresh off re-election, always speaking his mind, no doubt. So that's that for today. By the time you've seen this, it's probably more, because the news cycle is moving at a rapid pace again, literally by the half an hour, with the president tweeting and et al. Coming back home and talking about some of this gambling stuff in a follow-up, I told you yesterday that I think we caught the Senate president here in Rhode Island a little bit of a misspeak. Some would say double speak. We got a clarification, right? So on Monday, when the Senate president was here, he indicated to me that online gambling was his top priority for the 2019 legislative session. That to buoy you having to drag your tail to Twin River and Tiverton in order to be able to make a sports bet. So already they're forecasting online gambling. They're not exactly sure how they want to get it done. I have been tangling with state legislators over the idea that any gaming of any kind regarding sports needed a referendum. Obviously they disagreed with the in-house gaming, but the president of the Senate, President Ruggiero, said Monday he didn't think that required a referendum either. And I said, wait a second, didn't you tell me it did months ago? And this is what he did say months ago.
All the information that I received, other attorneys who represent professional sports and the NCAA, they felt that the Supreme Court was going to take this up and that they would issue a favorable decision. In light of that, I think I spoke with the governor's office, told them what I was looking to do as far as just sports betting, not internet gaming at the time, because I am of the opinion that internet gaming would require a referendum because it is an expansion of gaming.
Right? So I had this kind of like, huh, yesterday. Well, the Senate President's spokesman, Greg Perry, offered this clarification to us yesterday. Since that time, meaning in May when he said that, the attorneys have begun to research the question relative to mobile gaming, and the general consensus is that it's something that's going to be okay as long as the server is in-house. It's the wild, wild west right now when it comes to this, which is a perfect transition to my guest. Headline, of course, on sports betting. Let's get it on, said the Senate President Monday night. All right, Professor, let's get it on. This is very fertile territory, is it not?
Yes. The Supreme Court decision in May basically set us up for the greatest expansion of gambling in our country's history. So that's a national issue. I mean, that's what it did. We had sports gambling in one state. By the time we're done, we might have it in all 50 states. So So the National Council on Problem Gambling is right on that. It's potentially the greatest. So that's a real national level. But what's happening is it's being played out state by state. And Rhode Island was the first one in New England to have sports betting. Started Monday. What I think the Senate President is hoping for is we've got states competing against states for whether it's casino gambling, other types of revenue generation methods. I think he's hoping that people from Massachusetts and Connecticut will come to Rhode Island to do sports betting. You might be right for the initial term here. But you can bet that Massachusetts and Connecticut are going to be monitoring this closely. And if it's a situation where they find tremendous success here in terms of sports betting, Connecticut will probably, I mean, Connecticut's got a new governor. He's got challenges in terms of the fiscal situation of his state. He's trying to raise revenue. Massachusetts seems to be doing pretty well. They've had some pretty intense interest in terms of the marijuana sales. We'll see where that goes. Rhode Island's monitoring Massachusetts. So it's the state versus state competition.
All right, so it feels like the solution to all of our budgetary challenges is adding in as many vice behaviors as we possibly can. We'll talk about that the competition on the gaming, the online gaming, the constitutionality, and then we'll talk about fanship, which is, I think, perhaps in jeopardy. We'll be right back.
Let the games begin.
It's official.
Gentlemen, if you'd like to hold those tickets up so everybody can see.
Legalized sports betting up and running in Rhode Island at Twin River Casino in Lincoln.
It felt good. It was exciting. There was a lot of activity, and you see people that are excited and anxious to place their bets.
Well, obviously, it's going to raise a lot of revenue for the state, just in the tax dollars. I mean, we know that it's a billion-dollar industry that's been for years illegal, except for the state of Nevada. So it's a chance for the state to get a part of something that's really, it's fun.
The new form of legalized gambling comes after the Supreme Court overturned a law prohibiting it this spring. Lawmakers put the framework for it into the state budget. It was supposed to start in October, but was delayed until today.
I always knew this would be a tremendous revenue generator for the state of Rhode Island. I'm still confident that it will be, even though we started a little later than we anticipated.
This is the first phase of the project. A new sports lounge is under construction and is set to open in December. That's the same month sports betting will begin in Tiverton.
You know, it's interesting. There's some $11 million being spent alone at Twin River on this new sports book parlor, which is going to be really nice. I took a walk through Monday night, that same look that you had there with Craig Schoolis, the general manager, who will probably end up here in the next week or two, schedule-wise. We're working that out to talk about their plans. And I was talking to a couple of guys last night before the PC game, and we were discussing, you know, what fans want. And the nature of sports gaming is a little different than pari-mutuel. I was talking to you about, I like to play horses every once in a while. You know, you bet the race, you see the race, you either cash the tickets or you don't. This is, you bet the game, and you wait 3 hours, right? Or you watch it. So in order to be able to bring people in, you know, booze them up and have them, you know, eat a plenty, you've got to build a comfortable setting for that, right? And then online gambling comes in, and what does that do to bust up that investment? Where are we going?
I don't know if we know yet what's going to happen. I think
it's smart for smart people like you to say you don't know yet, because we don't know yet.
We don't know yet. We don't.
Even though you study this stuff and the trends and all that kind of thing.
But here's what we do know.
Okay, tell me what we do.
With increased sports betting, you've got more people betting, and you've got more potential for problem gambling. That's what we know. And so it's incumbent on states like, we've got the national issue, but then we've got local issues. It's incumbent on states like Rhode Island and anybody else that introduces sports betting to make sure that they're going to support problem gambling prevention and treatment programs, because those problems are going to come about. That's what we know.
And I'm not sure, to be honest with you, this one got by me. I'm not sure what our budget is for that.
It's not good.
What is it?
As of 2016, it was $140,000. where Rhode Island got $320 million. So it's not much.
You've seen the poison pill part of this whole thing,
yes,
and have studied it significantly. Do you have a way to gauge? Not until you see the volume, right?
Right. But the National Council on Problem Gambling recommends 1% of all gambling revenue go to problem gambling prevention and treatment programs. Right now, it's less than 1/10 of 1%. So you could increase it by 10 times countrywide to get it to where they would recommend that it be. There are only 2 states where it is at 1% now, and Massachusetts is one of them, because they're just starting to get into the gambling business in terms of having their casinos come online.
Yeah, so it is kind of fascinating. So Connecticut started this whole New England thing. You've studied Connecticut at length, you know, between Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods. Massachusetts is coming on, you know, Springfield MGM is up, kills me because I'm an old Springfield guy and fought like heck against those casinos because I thought they'd be economic sucking sounds, and I still project that they will be. But that was government. That was Deval Patrick, man. He set the tone for that. So Massachusetts jumps on there. Yet they're being a little more careful about the sports betting thing. Yes. We're jumping into this. I mean, Senate President Rosario is honest about it. I've been trying to get this for 30 years to cut into the bookie business that reportedly is so prevalent. Everyone, as you said, is just jockeying for position. Right. What's the end game?
the end game, I think, is within 5 to 10 years. You're going to have casinos in all 3 states. We know that. You're going to have sports betting probably in all 3 states: Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. And and so I think that's really what you're going to be seeing. And you'll probably have marijuana sales in all 3 states.
Well, Massachusetts listen, after all the aggravation they've had with the traffic up in Leicester, and a little less so in Northampton, but still.
See how much revenue it generates, because that's the big issue
but
here.
We got them coming in Seekonk, we got them coming in Attleboro. I mean, this is going to be all over the place.
Yes.
You feel like Rhode Island will succumb to that pressure simply from competitive points of view?
Yes, and I think Deval Patrick, he was tired of seeing Massachusetts residents go to gamble at Rhode Island facilities and in Connecticut, and they saw all the tax revenue that was flowing to Hartford, and they said, hey, we need to. And it was, even before him, Mitt Romney said, all right, you guys need to pay us something, or else we're going to do casinos. So it was way, Massachusetts saw that this was happening.
Not much moral rationale here anymore.
No.
It's all about the financial equation.
And I think 2008 changed everything.
Meaning?
That there was such a significant recession that hit all of the budgets and hurt employment, that's what drove everybody to really consider casinos on a more viable basis. And so Massachusetts has taken a very methodical approach. I like it. What they've done in terms of, we're going to have referendums, we're going to have votes in local areas, and we're going to have statewide referendum, and it was all approved. And there were 4 or 5 cities in Massachusetts that said, no, you're not going to build a casino here.
Right.
I think that's a great approach to take. Let the people vote, because given that you're going to have problems that come along with these, give the people a say.
Well, there's the problems that come along with, and then there's just, look, there's just so much water you can get from a rock, right?
That's right.
What is gaming in general going to do to the local, regional, and national economy? I mean, it's not like people are making more money to gamble with.
That's true, and that's why it's so important that people have an understanding of the risks. And that, in my view, in the next 5 to 10 years, you've got to start to get down into the school systems and say, all right, this is what is potentially available to you. Here are the potential risks, because you need to educate people in terms of what the potential downside is.
You think it ought to be elementary or middle or high school curriculum?
Middle and high school should start to get exposed to all the vices. You don't want to smoke. You don't want to use drugs, alcohol. And gambling's part of that.
You want the school systems to be, we've already lost the reading, writing, and arithmetic commitment exclusively. This is part of what, health care, or health education, like sex and health education?
I would love to see some of the issues associated with gambling in a math class. Because when you start to look at, it's all having to do with math in terms of gambling. And I want educated consumers.
Huh. That's a radio show. Maybe it already happened, because we tape this at 1 and then you see it at night. In between there's a radio show. When we come back, another thing we've talked about on the radio show, and that's what it's like to be a fan with all this gambling opportunity next. So you see this headline, the Providence Journal is full of them today. Everybody wants in on this thing now. States are rushing. The good thing about Rhode Island is Rhode Island's got a high take.
They do.
We're at 51%.
Highest in the country.
So I'll give the legislature credit for that.
If your objective is to raise revenue, have a high rate. You're going to raise more revenue.
But the discussion is, do the casinos that are running the sports gaming have enough capital with profit to market and to sell this whole thing?
To be successful.
Because some states are as low as, what, 15, 16% in terms of what they're taking?
Less than 10.
Wow.
For certain states, yes. It's less than 10.
All right, well, give the Rhode Islanders credit that...
If your objective is to raise revenue, they did a good job.
Well, what else would be objective?
That's their main objective. When you hear, that's their main objective.
Quality of life, I don't know, that's an interesting concept, too. But we mentioned during the break, real quick, you're not sure whether online gaming is going to benefit Twin River. They'd rather see the bodies in the building.
Well, one of the advantages of having sports betting at Twin River and at Tiverton is people are going to go there. That's one of the things things they're interested in. So we'll see how the online plays out in that how much of a benefit is Twin River going to get from online gambling, and will that, how much of an increase will that be
They'll
for
be
them?
looking for a bigger take. This will be really interesting when we get them in hopefully next week. They'll be looking for a bigger take of online gambling.
You can expect they will.
Okay, so the fan. I've been talking about this. I'm a Giant fan. Sorry.
Me too. Me too.
You want to just go to the bar right now because it's not been very good. But Patriots fans in Gillette screaming bloody murder for a divisional AFC and Super Bowl championship. That's their goal. That's their dream. That's the whole fandom thing. The psychology of it is wacky. 5 years from now, do we have most fans quieting down? Do the stadiums quiet down because they're really just concerned with whether the line has been achieved, whether they beat the spread, rather than whether they won a trophy? What's fandom going to be like in this country?
This has been called the gambleization of sports. And I think we have to be careful of that, especially, and I'm concerned about youngsters who go to watch games, and they're going to watch their parents. And if their parents are sports bettors that are very much dependent on the line, or here we got a spread here, well, you know, how many touchdowns is Brady going to throw, and that sort of thing, the kids are going to pick up on that. And so I think that we have a potential challenge there in terms of, hey, it's nice to go to a game with youngsters, okay, and you root for your team, and you know, do we really want to have that focus be on all of the sports betting that's going to be happening?
Well, there's a reason, by the way. Everyone goes, well, of course, but they really don't explain the reason. There's a reason why PC and URI and Bryant and Brown are exempt from sports gaming in our state. Corruption worries.
Right. Sure.
But
sure.
And also the fandom thing probably plays a little bit of a role in that, a little bit.
Potentially a little, but I think I'm really glad to see that it's exempt for those schools. Just, you know, given the potential downside.
Well, other than bookie bets that are going on anyway, and there's plenty, at least a fan for PC or URI on Saturday going to the game can scream bloody murder for their loyalties, rather than just worrying about whether or not the Rams are getting 7, and they'll probably be getting 7 or 8 or 9 or 10. I don't know how that works. Crazy world, huh?
Yes.
What's your initial executive summary, gut check? Hey, Professor, what do you think about this new field of gambling? What's the 30-second soundbite when people stop you in the hallways at PC?
Right now, states are interested in raising revenues. That's what Rhode Island's doing. That's why they rushed into this. What I'm afraid they're missing is, all right, that's going to result in increased problems. And are those problems being addressed? And right now they're not, and that's unfortunate. And we really need to fix that.
Kind of simple as that, huh? Thanks for your viewpoint. Really interesting stuff. Don't go away on me. This is going to be an interesting ride. Final word when we come back. Stay with us. You know, we're always worried about our kids, but the truth of the matter is that I haven't had a public conversation, and if I'm going to be really honest with you, I haven't really thought about the kids in this whole thing. So that is something that, you know, we're always encouraging ourselves as parents to talk to our children about this stuff. It might be something you want to start with. The big question is whether this becomes a curriculum type of thing. The professor, I think, is brainstorming something that really needs to be discussed on a more official level. So we'll talk more about those things, of course. Lots of important stuff still to come. What do we have tomorrow? Oh, yes, Senator Nesselbush, who wants more secrecy for the better government of Rhode Island. Tomorrow, you'll get it. Bye.